Hi, I'm Tess. And last Thanksgiving, my parents told me not to come because, and I quote, it's just for family this year. They didn't scream, they didn't accuse, they just excluded me so casually it almost sounded polite. It was the night before Thanksgiving. My friend Jamie and I were in her kitchen, laughing over burnt cornbread and boxed wine, prepping for a low-key Friendsgiving. It smelled like rosemary, butter, and something close to safety. Then my phone buzzed. Mom. Hey honey, we're keeping things small tomorrow, just immediate family this year, okay? I read it twice. Immediate family, Jamie noticed. Everything okay? I didn't answer right away, just stared at the message like it was written in another language. I knew what it meant. Not in theory, in practice. I'd been here before. The careful phrasing, the avoidance of blame, the performance of kindness while slipping in the knife. It wasn't new, it just finally stopped being subtle. I put the phone down slowly. They uninvited me, I said. Jamie looked confused. Wait, what? I shrugged. Thanksgiving, they decided I'm not immediate enough. She blinked. You're their daughter. That's what my birth certificate says. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. Here's the thing. I've never been the family disappointment. I didn't crash cars or max out credit cards. I didn't ask for money. I didn't make scenes at weddings or borrow rent or date felons. But I also wasn't the golden child. That role belonged to my brother, Dean. Dean, who once dropped out of college 3 times but still got a graduation party. Dean, who needed time to figure things out while living rent-free for 4 years. Dean, who once stole my laptop and then cried until I apologized for making a scene. Meanwhile, I graduated early, paid my own bills, co-signed their mortgage when Dad's credit didn't make the cut, took care of Mom after her knee surgery, quietly, consistently, no spotlight required. But you don't get praised for not being a problem. You just get ignored. That night, I didn't text back. I didn't fight it. I drove home, fed my cat, poured a glass of wine, and opened my laptop. Not for retail therapy, not to draft a sad post on Facebook, but to log into every account they depended on me for. Cell plan, mine. Internet, under my name. Streaming services, my card. Grocery rewards, pharmacy discounts, gas apps, registered to me. Health insurance, I added them when they lost their employer coverage. Dean's credit card, still linked to my backup account, in case of emergencies. I had a folder labeled Family Things. I renamed it Former Family. It wasn't out of rage. It was ritual. A quiet rebalancing. If I wasn't family enough for dinner, I wasn't family enough for the discount code that saved them $34.99 a month. Thanksgiving morning, I woke up to sunshine and silence. No guilt, no second guessing, just the absence of noise. It felt clean. Jamie texted me a photo of the dining table she set up. Paper napkins, cranberry sauce in a plastic tub, 3 friends I barely knew and already liked more than most relatives. Come eat, no explanations required. I grabbed my keys. Around 3 p.m., my phone buzzed again. Dad. Tess, the internet's down. Know anything about that? Then Mom. Sweetheart, the TV isn't working. Dean's trying to fix it, but you know how he is with tech. Then Dean, of course. Did you cancel the Spotify? Why the hell would you do that? I smiled into my coffee, then typed one message. Simple. Clean. Me. Ask your immediate family. I silenced the thread and left my phone in the glove box. People say blood is thicker than water, but sometimes water hydrates you. Blood just stains the rug. At Jamie's, we ate too much and laughed too hard. Someone brought pie in a plastic shell from a gas station. I don't remember what we were talking about when I realized I wasn't waiting for an apology anymore. I wasn't even hoping they'd notice I was gone, because for the first time, I knew the truth. They never missed me when I showed up. They only missed what I gave them. Would you have replied to that text, or just pulled the plug quietly, like Tess did? The first voicemail came at 9:17 a.m. on Black Friday. Mom's voice, overly sweet. Hi, honey, I noticed some of the accounts are acting weird. I'm sure it's just a tech thing. Anyway, give me a call when you can, okay? I didn't call back. The second one an hour later was shorter and sharper. Dad, Tess, what's going on with the internet? Dean can't work and your mother's already upset. If you change something, undo it. No please, no are you okay, just commands. Like I was a service line that had gone offline. I made coffee slowly that morning, letting the bitterness settle on my tongue before answering anything. There's something strangely satisfying about watching people scramble when the foundation they've stood on, your foundation, starts to crack. And yet, I wasn't cruel. I didn't delete anything. Not yet. I just paused what had always been running, quietly in the background. That afternoon, my phone buzzed again. Dean, you're seriously doing this over one dinner? I looked at the message for a long time. I could have said, it was never about one dinner. I could have said, it was about every time you walked past me like I was the help. But instead, I typed, me. This isn't about dinner, it's about dignity. He didn't reply. I spent the rest of the weekend alone in my apartment, the silence stretching but not suffocating. I cleaned, I re-watched old movies I loved as a kid, the ones they never watched with me. I opened the windows wide and let the cold in, needing something real to touch my skin. On Sunday, the doorbell rang. Jamie stood there holding a Tupperware container and a look of cautious concern. I figured you didn't keep the leftovers, she said, handing it to me. Inside, stuffing, half a slice of pie, and 2 perfect rolls. I shouldn't be this touched by bread, I said quietly. Jamie sat beside me on the couch without asking. That's the thing about the right people. They don't make you explain your absence. They make space for your presence. You okay? She asked after a moment. I nodded slowly. I think I'm just tired of pretending I'm not tired. Later that night, I got an email. Not a message, not a call. A formal, oddly polite email from my mother. Subject line, urgent, utility accounts. Hi Tess, we noticed the electricity account is now showing access denied. We're concerned there's been a mistake. If you could restore the original login or transfer the name back to us, that would be appreciated. Love, Mom. That's when I realized something. They didn't see this as a betrayal. They saw it as a glitch. To them, I wasn't withdrawing love. I was interfering with operations. That's what I had been reduced to. A convenient infrastructure, a Wi-Fi password, a backup plan, a signature when credit scores weren't high enough, and the scariest part? I had let them. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I printed everything. Statements, auto-pay confirmations, emails, insurance notices, the rent agreement I co-signed for Dean, the medical plan I added Mom to without ever being reimbursed. I sat at my dining table for hours, sorting them into categories: living, health, leisure, emergency. The numbers told a story I hadn't wanted to admit to myself. $12,417.85. That's what I had silently spent in the last 3 years on a family who couldn't bother to save me a chair at Thanksgiving. I sent them a new email. No anger, no guilt. Subject line, financial transition. Hi, please be advised that all accounts, utilities, and services under my name will be fully discontinued by the 1st of the month. You are welcome to reactivate or transfer them independently. Attached, a summary of all charges paid by me on behalf of the household between 2020-2023. This is not a request for repayment, just clarity. Tess. The phone rang 3 minutes later. I didn't answer. Then it rang again, and again. Finally, a text from my dad. We need to talk. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. And there it was. The line. The gaslight grenade I knew was coming. Because when you finally speak up, people who've benefited from your silence will always say you're overreacting. I let the phone buzz on the counter. Then I picked up the folder where I had placed the printed papers. On the front, I wrote in black Sharpie, proof I was never imagining it. And for the first time, I let myself believe that maybe I hadn't been crazy all those years. Maybe they just liked me better when I was useful, not honest. It was the email subject line that gave it away. Let's talk. Over dinner? No one in my family uses parentheses unless they're trying to appear casual while carefully orchestrating control. I didn't open it at first. I stared at the preview in my inbox while reheating soup in the microwave, something comforting about cheap food that asks for nothing in return. 3 days had passed since I sent them the full financial breakdown. 3 days of silence, then panic, then this. An olive branch wrapped in guilt, dipped in fake warmth. I clicked it open. Tess, we've been thinking about everything that's happened. Maybe it's time we sat down, just us, and talked things through. No pressure, of course. Just dinner. Love, mom dinner. That's what they always reached for when words failed. Which was ironic, because we never actually talked at dinner. Not when I came out. Not when I graduated. Not when I covered Dad's tax penalty 2 years ago. Just forks scraping against silence and someone eventually changing the subject to Dean. The last time we had dinner, Mom said I looked tired in the eyes, like I had some cosmetic flaw instead of emotional exhaustion. Dean had spent the evening bragging about trying crypto, and Dad asked if I'd be willing to just float one of his payments for a week. I hadn't even finished my salad before I realized I was the main course. Jamie looked up from her laptop when I told her. They want to meet? I nodded. Dinner, which we both know is code for control. She didn't say anything for a moment, then asked, Are you going? I'm thinking about it, I replied, but not because I want reconciliation. Jamie raised a brow. Then why? I sipped my tea. Because I want to hear what they sound like when they don't hold all the power. We met at a mid-tier steakhouse that Dad used to love because they validate parking. I arrived first, which was intentional. I wanted them to walk into my silence for once. They showed up 2 minutes late. Mom smiled too brightly. Dad avoided eye contact. Dean didn't come. Sweetheart, Mom said, sliding into the booth. You look, well, I let that hang. Dad coughed. Glad you could make it. I figured it was time, I replied, folding my hands on the table. For clarity. We ordered. No one touched the bread basket. It started polite. It always does. We just want to move forward, Mom said, tone syrupy. No drama. And we feel, Dad added, like maybe this whole thing got blown out of proportion. I nodded slowly. Out of proportion, like how you forgot to mention you'd been using my insurance to cover Dean's therapy sessions last year without telling me? Dad's face went pale. I only noticed when my deductible spiked, I continued. Thought it was a billing error, until I saw the provider name. Mom opened her mouth, then shut it again. That wasn't personal, she finally said, quieter. We just needed help. And I didn't? I asked, voice still calm. When I was paying off my student loans while working 2 jobs, did you think to ask if I needed help? Their silence was everything. I let them fumble through half-baked apologies. Dad muttered something about being bad with details. Mom tried to reframe everything as a misunderstanding, but they never said sorry. Not once. Not clearly. So I reached into my bag and pulled out an envelope. It wasn't thick. Just 1 sheet. What's this? Mom asked, already nervous. A formal statement, I said, of financial disassociation. They blinked. It's not legal, I added, but it's symbolic. I'm done covering for things I didn't break. Done filling roles I didn't apply for. Mom looked at me like I'd slapped her. Tess, we're family. No, I said, standing. We're a contract I never agreed to, and I'm letting it expire. I left the dinner before the entrees arrived. Didn't wait for parking validation. I walked 2 blocks, took a breath that felt earned, and called Jamie. Well, she said. They brought the charm, the guilt, and the spin, I said. I brought the truth. What would you do if your family only saw your value when it benefited them? 2 days after the steakhouse dinner, I received a letter. Not an email, not a text. An actual paper envelope, my name written in my mother's curvy cursive like we were still living in a decade where handwritten apologies meant something. The return address was theirs, but the postmark was stamped from a law office downtown. Inside, a letter, 2 pages long, formal, cold, passive-aggressive, dressed in legal formatting. They were seeking clarity on the financial arrangements previously agreed upon. They were concerned about the abrupt severance of shared responsibilities. They were open to discussing restitution options. Restitution. They made it sound like I'd stolen from them. I read it twice, 3 times. The words didn't burn. They chilled. It was all there. The twist I should have seen coming. I hadn't just taken away access. I'd exposed how dependent they'd become. And now, cornered and embarrassed, they were turning to bureaucracy to punish what they couldn't control. Jamie sat across from me at my kitchen island that night, her eyes scanning the letter. "This isn't about money," she said. "No," I replied. "It's about losing their grip. And now they want to scare you into giving it back." I nodded. "That, or make me doubt myself. Either way, they're trying to drag me back into the story where I'm the helper who overreacts." Jamie looked up. "You're not going to respond, are you?" "Oh, I'm going to respond," I said, "but not how they expect." The next morning, I made 2 appointments, one with a therapist, the other with a financial advisor. The therapist, Valerie, had warm eyes and a voice that didn't rush. When I told her the summary, she asked one question that cracked something open. "When was the first time you remember being useful before being loved?" I had to sit with that. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. The silence that followed felt like a truth settling into its final shape. The financial advisor meeting, on the other hand, was all numbers, and yet it felt just as personal. We walked through my past payments, the co-signed debts, the accounts I'd closed. I expected judgment. Instead, the advisor, Angela, just said, "You've been supporting a household that isn't yours. Time to legally separate your name from their consequences." She handed me a list of action steps, some simple, some tedious. Then she looked me in the eye and said, "Tess, this isn't just financial hygiene. This is emotional cleanup. You're allowed to stop bleeding quietly into their problems." I left her office with paperwork, a plan, and for the first time in a long time, a sense of forward motion. 3 days later, I filed to remove my name from the family's secondary mortgage. It took hours, calls, notarized documents, waiting on hold while looped piano music played like an insult to urgency. But when it was done, I walked out of the bank lighter than I'd felt in years. At home, I took out a small wooden box from the back of my closet. I hadn't opened it since the year Dean crashed my car, and I covered the deductible without telling our parents. Inside were pieces I'd kept not out of sentiment, but as protection. Copies of emails where Mom asked me to just cover something until Dad got paid. A PDF where Dad admitted to missing a tax payment and asked me to call in a favor. Voice memos of Dean leaving voicemails asking me to unlock the card for just 1 more week. I didn't need them for court. I needed them for clarity. Sometimes we gaslight ourselves so well, we forget our own truth. This box? It was my memory, unedited. Then came the call. Not from Mom, not from Dad, but from Dean. I almost didn't answer, but something told me it was time. "Tess?" His voice was tight. "What the hell did you do?" I said nothing. "I got denied for the car loan. The bank said the cosigner was removed. You know I needed that." "I know," I cut in. "But I'm not your bank, I'm your sister. And I'm done funding your irresponsibility." He scoffed. "You've always been so damn dramatic. And you've always been so damn dependent." A beat of silence. Then I added, "You had time to figure things out. Years, actually. I gave you help when it was help. Now it's just a habit. And I'm breaking it." "You think you're better than us now?" "No," I said quietly. "I think I'm finally better to me." I ended the call. That night I sent one final message to my parents. Subject: legal inquiry. No further discussion is required. I've formally removed myself from all financial obligations tied to your household. There is no restitution to consider, only responsibility that was never yours to begin with. Tess. Ever had someone treat your help like a subscription they forgot they were paying for? The first real sign something was off came through my mailbox again. I'd gotten used to it by now. The silent communication of my parents, emails laced with subtext, paper letters pretending to be polite. But this one wasn't from them directly. It was from the IRS. "We've identified a discrepancy in your 2022 filing. A reported 1099 under your Social Security number appears to conflict with your prior income statement." At first, I thought it was a scam. I'd been careful, I kept records. I double-checked with my accountant each year. But when I pulled up the reported 1099, the company name stopped me cold. Harborstone Home Services. It was a small contracting business, registered under my father's name. Except the 1099 wasn't addressed to him. It was addressed to Tessie Morgan, my name, my number, my liability. I sat on the floor of my apartment, folder in hand, receipts open, heart pounding, not fast, not panicked, just heavier than usual. Because the reality wasn't unfamiliar. It was just official now. They hadn't just depended on me. They hadn't just guilted me. They'd used me. Illegally. I made one phone call. "Hey," I said, voice low. "I know it's a holiday weekend, but do you have 5 minutes?" Angela, my financial advisor, didn't hesitate. "Send me what you got. I'll take a look now." 15 minutes later, she confirmed what I already suspected. "They reported income under your SSN. That's identity misuse. Doesn't matter if they're family." "But they didn't take money," I said. "They just filed something under my name." Angela's voice was steady. "That is taking something. Your clean record, your legal name, your trust." I didn't call my parents. I didn't send a scathing email. I drove. 3 hours. Back to the neighborhood where everything always looked better from the outside. Same green shutters, same wind chimes on the porch. But now it felt like a set I'd outgrown. I knocked once. Mom answered. Still in her robe, a surprised smile curling at the edges. "Tess, we weren't expecting—" "You filed under my name," I said before she could finish. Her face froze. "What are you talking about?" "Harborstone, 1099, IRS. Ring any bells?" Behind her, I heard Dad's chair scrape across the kitchen floor. He stepped into view, arms crossed. "That was just a clerical thing," he said quickly. "It didn't affect anything." "It affected me," I said. "It's my name, my number. You didn't ask." Mom stammered. "We didn't think you'd mind. You weren't using it for anything. It's just paperwork." "You stole my identity?" I said flatly. "That's not paperwork. That's fraud." The worst part wasn't their denial. It wasn't even their silence. It was that they looked more annoyed than ashamed. Like I had made things awkward. Like I was blowing it out of proportion again. I turned to leave. Dad called after me. We were trying to keep the business afloat. It was family. I didn't turn back. "You should have remembered that when you told me I wasn't." Back home, I contacted a legal aid center. Not to sue, not yet, just to protect myself. They helped me draft a formal letter of record, a document I'd keep on file, confirming I had not authorized the use of my personal information for business or tax purposes. Then they asked me the hardest question so far. "Do you want to pursue criminal action?" I paused. In another life, maybe. But this wasn't about punishment. It was about permission. Permission to never go back. A week passed. No calls, no letters. Just digital silence. Until Jamie sent me a link. "Hey, you've seen this?" I clicked. A local news blog. Headline: Family-owned contracting business faces scrutiny over tax filing discrepancies. No names mentioned. But I knew. It was them. Turns out the IRS didn't wait for me to press charges. A standard audit had picked up the error. They were being flagged, not because of me, but because they'd gotten sloppy. Jamie texted again. "You didn't start the fire, but you sure stopped fanning the smoke." That night, I stood by my window, watching a slow fog roll in over the city. I thought of the years I'd spent cleaning up after their messes, plugging their holes, stitching their lies together with my silence. And I realized something I hadn't let myself believe until now. They'd built their house on me. And the moment I moved out, it started to collapse. I didn't plan to go back. Not in the poetic sense, no grand return to the scene of the crime. But logistics, as always, have a sense of irony. The county clerk's office was in my old neighborhood. The same one I hadn't driven through in nearly 8 months. The same exit that used to mean home and now felt like a dull echo of a version of me I didn't miss. I was finalizing something small, yet symbolic. Removing my name from the shared trust deed my parents had used to refinance their mortgage a few years ago, under the promise that it was temporary, symbolic, and just to help with the bank. Temporary turned into 5 years. Symbolic turned into binding. And just to help became a leash they yanked anytime they needed control. But this time, I came with a notarized revocation. Clean, irrefutable. It wasn't revenge. It was return of ownership. Of my name, my credit, my autonomy. When I parked near the building, I didn't even realize how close I was to the old house. 4 blocks. I didn't plan it, but my feet took me there. The house was still the same beige vinyl siding, same cracked walkway that Dean had promised to fix 2 summers ago, same hanging planter out front with nothing growing in it since 2020. Except now there was a for sale sign staked into the lawn, and taped to the inside of the front window in desperate bold font, "Motivated sellers, make an offer." I froze, because they never told me, because they hadn't listed the house out of strategy, they'd listed it out of necessity. And suddenly, the pieces fit. The legal letters, the panic, the desperation. They weren't just angry I pulled away. They were collapsing without my invisible scaffolding. I should have felt victorious. I should have felt something triumphant. But what I felt was something far stranger. Peace. Not because they were losing, but because I finally wasn't. That night, Jamie and I sat on the floor of my living room, surrounded by moving boxes. Not because I was leaving, but because I was redesigning. I had picked a new paint color. I bought new bookshelves. I was reclaiming the space. Not because I needed a fresh start, because I earned one. Jamie was reading through my closure folder, the stack of documents I'd kept since this entire thing began. "You know," she said, flipping through a highlighted letter, "you could go public with this." I shook my head. "What would that solve?" She tilted her head. "Maybe nothing, but maybe it helps someone else who thinks they're alone." I looked at the folder, at the weight of years I had turned into evidence, not for court, but for clarity. And I realized Jamie was right. Not because I needed attention, but because there's power in putting truth in daylight. So I did something terrifying. I wrote it all down. Not the names, not the scandal, just the story. What it feels like to be depended on, but never thanked. What it means when your family treats your generosity as a resource, not a gift. What happens when silence becomes a contract no one signed, but everyone enforces. What it costs to break free, and how worth it is. I posted it anonymously. 3 days later, it had over 80,000 shares. The comment that gutted me came from someone named Nora B. 1972. "I thought it was just me. I've been the responsible one for so long that I forgot what it feels like to rest. Thank you for reminding me I'm not crazy or selfish. Just done. Done. Not bitter, not angry, done. It's a small word, but it changes everything." Then came the voicemail. This time not from my parents, but from Dean. "Tess, you think you can just put our lives out there for the world to dissect? I don't care if you didn't name us. Everyone knows. You've ruined everything." I listened to it twice. He still didn't get it. He thought I'd burned the house down, but I didn't. I just stopped holding it up. 2 weeks later, I got an email from a community org that helps women navigate financial abuse inside families. They wanted to know if I'd speak, just once. Not as a victim, not even as an expert, just as someone who lived it. I almost said no. But then I remembered that feeling, the one I had at the county clerk's office, holding that signed revocation, the one I had standing outside my parents' house and seeing the for sale sign, the one I had when I realized the silence wasn't mine anymore. So I said yes, not because I had all the answers, but because sometimes the bravest thing you can say isn't "I forgive you." It's "I'm not coming back." It didn't end with a scream. There was no final argument, no courtroom showdown, no dramatic confrontation in the rain, just quiet, the kind that used to scare me. Now it sounded like peace. 3 months had passed since I posted the story. The original thread was archived now, but messages still trickled in. Some were long confessions, others were just 2 words. "Thank you." I kept them in a folder called Proof of Light, not to dwell, just to remember what happens when you stop hiding in the dark. I hadn't spoken to my family since Dean's voicemail. No calls, no letters, no guilt-ridden texts from my mother asking if we could just start fresh, until New Year's Day. That morning, while pouring coffee into a chipped blue mug, the one thing I'd taken from the old house, I heard the buzz of my phone. "Mom, we miss you. Maybe this year we could reset?" I stared at the message for a long time. Not because I didn't know how to respond, because I did. I typed back slowly, then paused, then deleted it all. Not out of pettiness, but because silence, when it's yours, isn't absence. It's authority. Instead of replying, I packed a small bag, grabbed my keys, and drove to the coast. Not for escape, but for ritual. The kind you give yourself when no one else does. I walked along the beach that afternoon, letting the wind push my hair in every direction. The sky was gray, the water angry, but my hands were steady. I sat down on the sand and pulled out a blank postcard. I'd bought it at a gas station on the way there. Nothing fancy, just a watercolor shell and the word, "Wish you were here." I turned it over, and in clean, even handwriting I wrote, "I don't hate you, but I love me more now. That's the difference. Tess." I didn't mail it, I didn't need to. That night back home I made dinner for myself. Not leftovers, not boxed pasta, a full plate. I lit a candle, not for mood, but to mark the fact that I made it, through it, without them, not broken, not bitter, just rebuilt. When I sat down at the table, I caught my reflection in the window. I didn't look powerful, or angry, or even proud. I just looked free. That's the thing about walking away. Everyone asks why you didn't stay. Almost no one asks what it costs to remain. I didn't slam the door behind me. I didn't even close it loudly. I just walked through it and kept walking. And they haven't seen me since. Sometimes walking away isn't a loud exit. It's a quiet return to yourself. I didn't choose distance because I hated them. I chose it because I finally loved myself enough to stop being the person everyone leaned on, but no one truly saw. If you've ever been the fixer, the invisible backbone, the one who's expected to hold it all together, this is your permission slip. You don't owe anyone your peace just because they share your name. What about you? Have you ever had to choose yourself over the people who claim to love you? Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, or what part of this story stayed with you. And hey, if this video found its way into your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next story. If you didn't like it, that's okay too. Tell me why. Tell me where you're tuning in from. This space is yours too.